Hopefully we are live and you guys can hear me. What is up, guys? It is Zach Plochet. It is currently like almost 10 p.m. here. Or sorry, almost 12 p.m. in Portugal. And yeah, currently I was just working on an app of mine, making sure that everything was nice and working. Unfortunately, it was not. So because of my vibe coding for the night, it was not working very well. Cursor is not always the best solution for some things, so you have to know how to implement this sort of thing yourself. And unfortunately, Cursor also likes to make changes to your code base that you don't want it to. It forgets context just because of, I don't know, maybe that's just where technology is right now. I wish the context window was larger without having to pay more. Anyways, that's where I'm at. So, in this video, or in today's lesson, we are going to cover something very basic, and I think I can teach it faster than it's been taught, at least a lot of other ways. So, with that said, give me just 1 second to get that set up. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. If we look here, and hopefully I can make this point towards the right video output, because currently it's not. Oh, it's pointing to the wrong monitor. Okay, there we go. All right, so here's my monitor. Yeah, I swapped over my monitor position as well, so let's get this. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to cover Python data types in a way that you might not have seen before. You might not have seen it mapped out this way, but I think it will be super useful for you to learn. So let's do this. I'm going to make a new file here, datatypes.py. And this is kind of a very quick learning lesson. So in Python, there are a very limited amount of data types. And when I say limited, I mean the default. I think they're called primitives. At least some of them are. The default Python data types are, there's only a limited amount. So what are these data types overall? The data types are strings, which looks like this. This is a string. There are integers, which is a whole number. There are floats, which is I think it's called like a floating point number, but it's also kind of a decimal, kind of not. It's more of a computer science thing. And then there's booleans, which is true or false. But for right now, we'll just put true. That also equates to 1 or 0, but that's kind of later. And then there is lists, which looks like this. So 1, 2, 3. There are tuples, which are like lists, but you can't actually change them. There are dictionaries, which are key value pairs, also known as hash tables in some other languages. Age 20. And also there are sets. Now, I don't know why this says data structures, because lists are data structures. So, if I'm not forgetting any, which I don't think I am, besides, I think the null value, which is none in Python, so there's also none. So, it's important to remember that, because that is something that is valuable. Now, these are pretty much all of the data types. So sets can only contain unique values. That's also something to go over once. So for example, if you were to print this out, if I say print sets here, and I run this file, let's see, if I run it in the terminal, python datatypes.py, oh, hold up, python, there we go. Right, so as you can see, when I actually print it, it only shows 1, 2, and 3. Now, with that said, we can start to organize these to be a little bit more useful, so you know all of the building blocks of Python. Because at one point or another, you're going to be using these and processing them through some sort of transformation or displaying them in a certain way, that sort of thing. So let's start breaking these apart. The first thing is primitives. Primitives. what does that entail? Let's see. Primitives equals, let's make this a list, so that will be strings, integers, floats, booleans, like that. And I could be wrong if they're called primitives or not, but basically it's the ones that aren't data structures, because basically all of these are data structures. None, or none, I'm not actually sure which category that falls under. That might be a primitive, but not certain about that. And then data structures. So these are basically data types that can contain other data types, including themselves. And I'm putting these all in lists just because lists I find to be the most convenient of the iterables. So these include list, tuple, dict, and set. That said, there are more ways to categorize these. So for example, you can also do which ones are iterable. Iterable just means you can basically run them through a for loop and they will work correctly. So these include strings, lists, tuples, dictionaries, and set. All of these you should be able to iterate through. Whereas the non-iterables are integers, floats, and booleans. You want to test that? Let's try it. So for I in range, for I in hello, or I should say for character in hello, because a string is a sequence of characters. Go ahead and print character. Let's see what it does. Right, so it printed each one of those one after another. H-E-L-L-O. Right, okay. Let's try a, what do we got here? Lists. So 1, 2, 3. Of course, we know that will work. 1, 2, 3. Let's do a tuple, which is pretty much the same thing. Try it again. 1, 2, 3. Still works. Let's try a dictionary. So 1. Hi. 2. Hello. 3. Hola. Fix the ending and run that. So it prints all of the keys in that case, at least by default. You could say print dot values and then that will do the other thing, but that's different. So we have we have that, and then let's try also a set. So I'm gonna do the same one as above. 3, 3. Have a bunch of those. Get rid of values because that's for dictionaries. Let's run that. And it's 1, 2, and 3 as well. Right. Now, since we did all of those, let's try iterating through an integer. Right. It is not iterable. That's true. Let's try doing a float. Right. It is not iterable. Let's try doing none. Right. It's also not iterable. And I guess none is of none type, so I'll just put that there. Yeah, so that's pretty much that. Also, like, true, of course, is also not iterable. Great. We're on the same page. And I feel like maybe there was more to that, but honestly, that might pretty much be it. Because once you understand how to work with your basic building blocks, you can start moving up the ladder. So what that means is basically from there it goes into, I believe, operators. So that's just like doing math of these things. So like you can add strings together to create a new string. Oh, right, that reminds me. So what I was going to add here is also immutables, or I should say mutables, which are lists, dictionaries, sets. So mutables are values that can be edited, or are data types that you can edit the content, whereas immutables are things that you cannot change after they are created. So what does that mean? Integer, float, boolean, tuple. So for example, if you have a string like this, say print hello, and then say plus world, and you run this, it will properly say hello world. However, in this example, there is no actual way, or let me rephrase that. Whenever you add these together, you're not combining these in a sense of like you're changing each one and combining it. What you're doing is you're actually creating a new string based off of the each one of these values. So what I mean by that is you can edit a list. So if I say Python down here and I make a list, my list equals list 1, 2, 3, like that, and I have my list here. So I can change a list. So I can say my list 0 equals 5, and I say my list, and now the value updated to where the first position is 5, right? Whereas with a string, you can't change anything. ASDF 0 equals F. Whoops. F. Right. String does not support item assignment because strings cannot be changed because they are immutable. Now, another one that is immutable, of course, is the tuple. Like numbers, of course, these aren't mutable. You can change the value or the assignment of the variable, but you cannot actually change the number itself because 1 is 1, and well, what was it going to do there? 1 is 1, but here wait, I equals 1, right? So 1 is I. There's probably better examples of this. I can't really think of it. 1 equals 1.0. 1 is 1.0. Right, so that becomes false. Let's see. Yeah, equals, and it's saying is. Yeah, that one, it's kind of hard to explain, so maybe we'll just skip that for now. Either way, you can't actually change the value. You can just reassign it. So I guess another way of putting this is like, for example, if I say my number equals 5, and then let's say I do my number plus 5, so that equals 10. But if I put my number again, it's still 5. The only way I can change my number to be something higher is if I do the following syntax: plus equals 5, or say my number equals my number plus 5. So in this case, we already assigned my number here, and in order to make this into a added version, we have to reassign it, and also, or sorry, reassign my number plus the 5, or plus whatever value you actually added to it. And yeah, essentially, like, you're not changing the number, you're changing the value that's assigned to this variable name, which is pretty neat. So with that said, tuple is also the same thing, and I guess in this case it would make sense to sort of point out the value of tuples. So tuples are meant to be or a way to think of it is like an unchanging row in a database or like a spreadsheet or a CSV, where the values are always in the same place. So for example, on one hand, you could write out a nice pretty little class here, be like, I'll just use Datatypes for example, but let's say you have a person, they have a name that is a string, age that is an integer. That's one way to write a person. So I could say people equals a list of 2 persons, like that. And then when you iterate through it, you could say for person in people, or if you want to keep it super simple, you could say people equals like this. You just do this, John 20, Jane 21, and you can iterate it like this: for name, age in people, print name, age, or you could say for person in people, print, in this case you'd have to do the specific position, or you can cut it out after. So what is it, name, age equals person. Yeah, different ways of doing it with tuples, but this way you always know that the name is first and the age is second, and that's why you can't actually update these. They're just made to be sort of like static placeholders in rows. Yeah, so not made to update, just pretty much just to read. And I do believe outside of that, that's pretty much everything. Because, yeah, from there, like I was saying before, you can get into operators, which is just basically math operations, plus, minus, times, divided by, modulus, and, like, there's more. And then there's, comparison operators, which basically just gives you true or false in a bunch of conditions. Logical operators, there's all of those. Basically, or and then not, I do believe. Like it says there, membership operators, which, okay, I guess that makes sense. So, membership operators work with iterables. So, like, you can check if A is in Apple, because strings are iterable. So you can see if A is somewhere in Apple, which it is at the first position. And you can check if it's not in Apple, which would return false, of course, because it is. Identity, that I've pretty much never used, so I'm not even really going to cover that. Let me just see if it auto spits out anything else. Identity, bitwise, which I've pretty much never used. Assignment, so assignment operators are pretty much useful. Just get rid of the ones that are not that. So this is just the shortcut for reassignment. So how I did the example earlier where my value was 5 and I wanted to add to it. This just says x equals x plus whatever number. And this is the same thing but with minus. Ternary, I mean, that's just literally assignment. So not really a point in covering that. After that, conditional logic. Or I guess conditional operators. I didn't know those were called operators. I thought they were called logic. So this comes down to if, elif, and else. If whatever value here is true, go ahead and run this. If it's not true, try to do the next thing. Else if is the same as if there is another condition. So if you want to check something before like anything else. So else if or elif x is equal to 10. So if that ends up being true, print x equals 10. Otherwise, go to the last condition, which is else. And you can add as many elifs as you want. Else is every other condition. So if none of these were true, just go ahead and do this. And then that will run. Yeah, so that's a pretty good thing. Let me see. From there, loops are the next step. So that is pretty much just for and while. Now, I don't know why I just did that twice. But basically, for loops work with iterables. So you're able to go through something for however many items are in that iterable. So range is a very convenient function, but you could say like we did before for I, or for character in hello, or for item in my list, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this case. Lots of things you can do. It just goes until it hits every item in that iterable. Now, the next one is, of course, while loops. So while this condition is true, keep running. So while loops can actually go on forever. So you got to be careful with these. The condition can change, however. So if I say my condition equals true, put my condition here. And then let's say at some point, I don't know, let's say we have a counter that equals 0. And then once counter equals, or so while counter does not equal 10, print counter. And then counter plus equals 1. So every time it goes through this loop, we're going to add 1 to counter until it actually hits the proper number. And then when it finally stops, it will end the loop. Let's try this. Right, so that was here. And it kept going until it stopped. And then from there, I mean, you pretty much just have functions. Like, I'll just let cursor do this part. Yeah, so like with parameters, blah, 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 blah. And then you get to classes. Like, technically you could cover decorators there, but if you can just do functions, you pretty much got it. Boom, right. And I mean, after that, you're pretty much just into like modules and packages and stuff. So hopefully that was like a good, I mean, I meant to only do data types, but I just showed you sort of the roadmap for learning pretty much everything in Python except the actual packaging. Or I should say making modules and packages and stuff like that. So yeah, this is my live stream beginner tutorial because I was too tired to make anything else or edit a video. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. I'm gonna go get some sleep and start a fresh day tomorrow. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and bye for now. Beep.